Now, let's catch up with David Adler, who's active in the Australian Jewish community. He's been a position holder in the Australian Medical Association and he writes for the Spectator Australia. Good to talk to you again, David. I was fascinated in your article about propaganda and misinformation during this coronavirus pandemic. We've heard a lot about the misinformation from nutters like the anti-vaxxers and the like, but you're very concerned about official misinformation.
Yes, I think most people can dismiss the fringe nutters, but we have seen a whole series of very important authorities, overseas and local, provide intentional or unintentional false and misleading information. So at the beginning of mid-January, at the beginning of the pandemic, we had arguably the most important international body, the World Health Organization, echo the propaganda from China that there was no human-to-human transmission. Now, this is critical. They did it at the beginning and they may well have encouraged certain countries to delay the implementation of measures that could have contained or restricted the spread.
Well, it was even more blatant than that, David. Sorry. Sure, what you say is absolutely correct. The WHO early on was just repeating the China propaganda. But the World Health Organization actively campaigned against the closure of international borders by countries like Australia, saying that was somehow racist. And yet, of course, we know that was the most beneficial thing that most countries did in terms of quelling the spread of the virus.
Yeah, it was important. So, and no one's accountable for that nonsense that was early on. Within China, there were doctors trying to call it out, and those doctors were pulled aside. They were disciplined. Some of them have disappeared. We don't know what happened to them. And the very first whistleblower, who's Dr. Liang, aged 34 only, was reported to have died of coronavirus in Wuhan. Now, maybe that's the case, but the chance of someone that age and also being the first whistleblower dying of coronavirus is an extremely rare event.
Very slim chance indeed. But the thing is, when you're looking at the World Health Organization, their kowtowing to China continues. They've had a group of investigators go into Wuhan only recently, and they came out saying next to nothing. Yet we've got Mike Pompeo and others pointing to overwhelming evidence that puts the Wuhan Institute in Virology in the frame for a likely accidental release of coronavirus.
Yep. And we've had President Biden recently, as one of his numerous executive orders, virtually ban the use of the term China virus or Wuhan virus. I mean, you can still talk about it, but it's been expunged from the communications of federal agencies, etc. And you know, locally we've had problems as well. We've had our first slogan from our government, "We're all in this together." I'm sure you remember that.
Well, yeah, we're all in this together, yet we slammed shut all our state borders.
Yeah, and public servants were insulated from any loss of income, but if you happen to be involved in hospitality or tourism, a small business owner, you're smashed. Next slogan was that we had to flatten the curve, and the argument was that we should not allow our health system, our hospitals, to be overwhelmed. Well, we flattened the curve, we crushed it, and still the restrictions were in place. And the Prime Minister then moved on to the COVID Safe app. And in April of last year, when he was spruiking that, he called it the ticket to releasing restrictions and likened it to sunscreen when you go outdoors. So despite some concerns about security, etc., over 6 million Australians, on the strength of those promises, downloaded it. It hardly detected, if any, detection of cases.
With the COVID app, there were a lot of critics at the time, and there was always a fair chance it wouldn't work too well, but I thought there was nothing to lose by giving it a go. They could have shortened the time that it needed to be exposed, but I mean, it was worth trying to have some sort of fast route to contact tracing. I want to bring you back to Joe Biden, though, because I think this is critical. We know about the propaganda China has put out there about the virus, the denial, the obfuscation, the cover-ups. We know that the World Health Organization has been far too slow to pick up on any of that and far too eager to toe the line for Beijing. Yet to have the new President of the United States actually sign an executive order that is an infringement of free speech, to a virus that came from Wuhan, a virus that came from China, you're not allowed to say that. He's basically outlawing you speaking the facts about the case.
Well, let me clarify, Chris, because America does have a First Amendment that protects free speech. What he's done, his executive order applies to all federal government agencies and authorities. So if you were an American journalist, you can still call it what you like.
Sure, but there's an official version that says you can't call it that, which is very much an infringement upon free expression and actually contesting of reality.
This is out of 1984. George Orwell would be, rolling over saying, I warned you about this stuff, now it's happening.
Yeah, sure is.
So I've gone through in the article a whole series of misinformation from important authorities, and the importance of this is that this week we've started to roll out the vaccination. Now, as you and I have discussed before, I'm generally in favour of vaccinations, although I think the effectiveness may have been oversold a bit. But for the first time in this country, we have an anti-vax movement that actually has real traction, and that's a worry. And I think that one of the causative factors is that people have seen lots of false promises, lots of information from organisations that they should be able to trust, and that's undermined the public confidence. So that's
important message, David.
Conclusion.
Important message, David. Thanks for joining us, sharing it with us.
Thank you, Chris.
David Adler there. You can read his piece in the Spectator Australia. It is crucial that all the government authorities and the authorities we trust share with us very open and clear and correct information as well.